I think the hardest lesson, which I continue to learn, is when to say no and when to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from environments or people or situations. But oftentimes, the only reason for me that happens is that there's not that sense of shared responsibility and collaboration. And I just can't help you then. If we do what everybody else does, or we do it the same way we've been doing it, we can expect the same results. And I don't want the same results. I want better results. I want to change cultures, and I want everyone to live and work in a more healthy, happy, and productive way.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, Tony. This is such an exciting thing to do, to kind of celebrate your 5 years in business with People Playbook. So I kind of want to dive into your story of who you are, what your upbringing was, to give context to where you started, and then that'll kind of inform where the conversation goes of how you ended up in People Playbook. So for people who don't know who you are, can you introduce yourself, your name and what you do?
Yes. My name is Tony McGaharan. I've grown up and been raised in Belfast, but traveled the world over, certainly a few different parts. And I'm also the founder and CEO of People Playbook.
Amazing. So where did you grow up in Belfast, and give us like a little insight to like what your childhood was like?
So I grew up in South Belfast and started off actually in Jerusalem Street on the Ormeau Road, and then moved over to Stranmillis. So it was a bit of a night and day shift, really, in terms of the experience of growing up in what's known as the Holy Lands here in Belfast, and then over to leafy suburban Stranmillis. Grew up with my mother, my brother, and my sister. You know, in terms of childhood memories that sort of stick out to me is growing up uh, with, primarily, at least certainly since I was sort of 9, 10, but really for the most of my life in a single parent family. Our mum did a good job at making sure we were afforded the same opportunities as our peers in this kind of, in that environment. So we were very fortunate that way. I don't think I took that for granted, but of course, looking back at, some of the challenges that my mum faced as a single parent, yeah, I can now appreciate even more so, how difficult that was for her, and then how incredible it was to like grow up. And I think we've talked deeply about this before, that, it never featured in my mindset, right? Like it didn't affect my confidence.
Mhm.
And if anything, yeah, it probably grew from that. Other things that stick out to me is that we kind of had like a revolving door in terms of people in our house, very much an open door policy, with family and friends and neighbors kind of coming through. And that was sort of important early on. I suppose what else in terms of childhood? Yeah, my mum was essentially the center of our family, and very much great energy and spirit, and created an environment for my brother, sister, and I to succeed in whatever way that meant for us, which was quite cool. And I often share stories about her and tell people that she gives the confidence to almost say we could be an astronaut, and we actually probably believe we could go to the moon. And so that confidence that she gave us early on in our lives, I think set the three of us up for success again in whatever capacity that meant for each of us.
Mm. And what kind of values do you think she was instilling with you at that time? And also, like, how did you see yourself as a young man?
Yeah, well, in terms of values, well, the other thing I'll say in terms of, yeah, young man, geez, I think the thing that people don't know about me
Mm.
is that I struggled a lot, sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, with confidence and self-esteem, and somewhat insecure. I got a lot of stage fright and didn't necessarily want to put myself in front of people. And one of the things my mum did for me was to send me to something called Youth Lyric, which essentially was like drama class for young people. And that was really formative for me actually at that stage. So that was really, really important. In terms of values for our mum that we learned growing up, lots of little different quips that I still refer to today. One, you only get out what you put in. That was a key thing. And, that mum really instilled that in us. I think the other main value, just as you asked that, something that I've been reflecting on recently, is just about treating people, fairly and with respect, regardless of their background or who they are, where they come from. And And that was really, really important to us growing up.
So it takes me into a nice segue of like, what was the next step of your journey within school? Like, you traveled, like, were you excited just to leave Belfast, or were you happy to stay? Or what was like your feeling at that time whenever you kind of went to America? And
Yeah, so I was 16 when I went to the States, and that was kind of the first real overseas experience for me. At 16 was super formative because we were thrust into this sort of private school environment, upstate New York. We were the center of attention, and it was brilliant. It was great fun, and you know, that opportunity really helped me kind of helped me develop further, and both in confidence, but also in desire to work more internationally or outside of home and have more kind of experiences outside of where I grew up. So, yeah, super, super formative. So that was when I was 16, 17. I came back, did my A levels, and did PE, business, and IT. And it's funny because all three really still feature in my life in different ways, right? You know, PE, I coach basketball, I play basketball. It's really a big part of my life and what I care deeply about. So that still exists.
Mhm.
Um, you know, IT, we do a lot with tech. I ended up working in Google later on in life. And I think, you know, I always had a desire to work with technology. And then business, obviously, we're here now because a lot of the excitement about starting a business came when I was 14, 15 years old in school. And then later at those sort of A level years, and then later on as an undergrad.
What made you decide that you wanted to work with Google? Because you'd worked in nonprofit work before, you're a coach in Sweden. That's like such a huge pivot of like almost kind of two conflicting identities. You know, because obviously there's prestige of like, yes, I work with Google and it's a whole like ecosystem in itself, but it's also like the stuff that you're passionate about. What was that like, and why did you want to do that?
It's a good question because it's such a weird. If you knew me back then,
Mm,
I was in my mid-20s. I'd got my teaching degree. I started doing substitute teaching. Then I ended up in nonprofit work, and I was really lit up by that. I was really like, oh my God, I'm going to do this forever. I enjoyed it. I think I was good at it. I was in an environment where what I was doing was really quite like there was something somewhat altruistic about it. I mean, of course, it was a job and I was getting paid, and but it was like, all right, this is good work. This is solid work. I'm happy with what I'm doing here and why I'm doing it and the purpose of it.
mm,
And then flip to getting an offer from a huge global tech company,
mm,
and that was really a tough moment because for me, I was a bit concerned about yeah, kind of losing myself and my own values and principles on one hand, if I did take this opportunity and how would it affect my own sense of identity and self, and I'm leaving behind, you know, I'm leaving behind kind of important parts of me and this job that gives me so much because I was really enjoying it, and I was like, oh, that's a risk, right? To do that. Equally, one of the best pieces of career advice I got when I was trying to figure out whether I took this kind of new graduate job in my 20s in Google in Dublin was, if not now, then when? And I think when I looked down the path, I was like, well, if I don't do this now, it's never going to happen again, really. I was sort of within that catchment of a new graduate. So that was interesting. I will say that again, you know, the people in my life, my closest sort of friends were like, you're making a mistake going to Google. And they were like, what are you doing? And I remember at the time feeling really conflicted because of my sense within my own friendship group about whether or not this was the right thing to do and whether I was making the right decision, you know, for me. Now, I know it was absolutely well intended, which is amazing to have people in your life who tell you the things you don't want to hear, even if they're the right thing or the wrong thing and so on. So it's definitely the right thing to hear. But, you know, again, you have to make decisions yourself. And I knew that if I didn't, I would regret it, not knowing. And really, I just wanted to experience it. I just wanted the challenge of going, could I exist in that environment? I think that's probably when I sort of had a sense of, um, I had a sense of like, oh, imposter syndrome in the sense that there's no way I would fit in this environment. But I was so curious to see because I fancied my chances to give it a good go.
Again, I'm connecting the dots of like, I can imagine maybe you felt this way when you went to America for the first time as well, of like, you're stepping, here's your group of friends and culture and society, and you're deciding to go, okay, I'm going to go this way. And you've had multiple moments of your life of these kind of sliding doors effect of like, if you didn't take Google, would we be sitting here right now?
Yeah.
If you didn't go to America, would you be sitting here right now? And it's super interesting that like you had the courage to take what people say, but also be like, you're curious. Your curiosity is what has led you to each step, and you're not knowing what's ahead is like your greatest gift because you're just taking it a step at a time and you're like, yeah, we'll see what happens, you know? And that's, I think you're a very, very curious person.
It's funny, like, yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. And it's, yeah, I'm just think if you don't, I'd rather, again, another former manager of mine said, you regret the things you didn't do more than things you did do. I think it's somewhat cliche, but I subscribe to the spirit of it. And part of me, certainly, whether it was going to the States or, I coach basketball uh, professionally. I was paid, not a lot of money, but I was paid when I was 22 to coach basketball in Sweden, which at the top women's level, that's weird and wild and shouldn't have happened. But I think the two things that have led me to these opportunities, which are like incredible and I'm grateful for, is that yeah, I think confidence and belief that yeah, I think I can be giving to these, and sometimes false confidence, but confidence nonetheless. And I think the second is really a clear vision on what will like what it look like. I really enjoy thinking about what things could be like and then trying to make them happen.
So what was that experience like? Give us like a synopsis of this next phase of entering the Google space. You're in the UK, Ireland for a bit, and then you move to Singapore. Like, give us like a
Yeah.
rundown of
Moved to,
that.
Moved to Dublin. Didn't love Dublin.
Yeah.
Found it to be close to home but not home. So that was a challenge with Dublin. The Google thing was awesome. I mean, it was the first couple of years, 2013. It was like you're gonna pay me. I mean, I was getting paid double what I was getting paid.
Yeah.
Like from a nonprofit, and I was just like, this is madness that you're gonna pay me all this money to answer the phone, talk to customers about their ads, and I loved that because I got to talk to loads of different
Yeah.
people and help solve problems um and eat free food and lunch and like work with really good people. And there was a really good energy at Google at the time around like nonprofits or, some of the stuff that I really enjoyed was helping organizations like Bernardo's and Foróiga and like different nonprofits basically and leveraging Google's resources, whether bringing young people into Google and giving them tours and doing outreach in that respect. I had an opportunity then to go to Singapore, which was wild. And I'd never been further east than I think at the time Israel and Palestine was on I was on a trip list actually on the 2014 or 2015, but I'd never been that far. I'd never been to Asia. And then this opportunity came up and I was going through a breakup, quite honestly. I was like, well, I share that, but I was going through a breakup. I was like, all right, new things. I was like, well, let's go, new things. And I applied. And because of all the relationships I'd built with this team in kind of people development, I was the last applicant and I got in and I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was pretty speedy. It was like 6 weeks and then I was away off to
From when you applied to
when I applied to when I accepted. And then I was like, okay, I'm taking this job. And then I moved to Singapore and took on a people development role, which was again, for me, formative because it was now starting to bring together my passion and interest in sort of education, learning, people development, that sort of space. And I was able to do it within arguably, the top company to work for in the world, really, at that point, back in 2015, 2016. And then I got to do it in a crazy cool place called Singapore.
Yeah. I remember you talking about it in one of the podcasts that like you hated Singapore. You hated it when you got there, but like, do you think you fell into that trap of like, okay, this is my big thing that's going to heal me from my breakup and I'm going to throw myself into this, new role? And like, did you think the grass was greener on the other side or were you running away from anything?
I think the context actually, I wasn't performing well. So that's important to know. Secondly, I was pretty far away from home in a place I'd never been to ever before in a different culture. And so regardless of opportunity, status, money, that stuff doesn't matter. It's not, as you said, like you can't build your house on that. And I was really feeling a little bit isolated, lost, couldn't really find my feet.
Mm.
So all that was happening. And then like, I had a couple of experiences where I thought, oh, there was something to do with a meeting where my manager called me entitled.
Mm.
And I actually ended up crying in the meeting. It was uncontrollable. And it knocked me, it blindsided me because it was so personal. I was just thinking, this is like the farthest thing from who I am. So I felt completely boxed in as and identified as something that I'm absolutely not. So that rocked me, for sure. So, that was an example of going, well, clearly I'm not in a good place. And then this just happened. I was going, and I'm here for the job. And that was the other thing. I think a lot of people, especially in today's world, are taking jobs based on the superficial aspects of, a tropical country, good money, good status, good company. I get to travel, but if you haven't got good people around you, in lots of ways, it can be quite troublesome. I think Singapore turned around for me. I met my partner at the time, and that was great. One of my best friends, he got a job as well in Singapore, so I became very grounded there, and it was great. And it was a great experience. For sure, yeah. So it ended well.
How long did you stay there for?
I was there just under 2 years, which is probably about enough. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so,
Okay.
yeah, so my partner, she ended up, she was rolling off her contract. She was working in the arts, and then, you know, her, her father was getting older, and we wanted to move back west, and I was delighted to be closer to home as well. So, I made the trip to London then after that. But London was great. It was great and it wasn't great. It was also hard. I mean, London's a hard place, but we kind of stuck that out for 3 years and ended up taking this job in Dublin to be like a global L&D lead.
Mm.
So I'd been doing recruitment in London. I really didn't like that job. I wasn't great at it. I was still doing the work that I wanted to do, working on my craft of learning design, facilitation, leadership, team development. Then I ended up moving to
So you'd been facilitating this whole time?
yeah, yeah. I mean, in Singapore, that was probably where I was like, oh, wow. And I started doing some more work with some colleagues out there. Actually, that's probably pretty important. That's what I started going, oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
being asked to do different things and travel a bit and sort of lead sessions and facilitate. And I was finding some success in that. And then in London again, yeah, I kept it going. And I think it was the first couple of external events outside of Google that I thought, okay, I'm getting good response from the folks I'm working with here, the participants in sessions that I'm facilitating, and thought, yeah, I could probably give this a good go. The first time I thought, oh, this is interesting, as in I might be better than I think I am, and I might be quite uniquely positioned to do this with external clients. Was I went to Edinburgh to do a gig on behalf of one of my clients from Google who said, look, I can't go, Tony. Would you mind going for this? And I was like, okay, great. We'll give that a go. And I went to Edinburgh and I designed and led a session, and it was a lot of Google content. And it was about 100 people, and I was so energized, and I kept the thing moving, and I was really pleased with how I had led it.
Mhm.
And like 5, 6 people came up to me after and to say how great it was. And at the time I was expecting them to say, I really love that Google model.
Mm.
Really loved the way you talked about this teaching point, like really about the content. And then what I discovered was none of them were sharing feedback about the what. It was the how, and it was the experience of being led in a session by me. And I thought this is really exciting because I really enjoyed it, and I started to recognize that that I maybe had some skill in it. And so yeah, it took some time to figure that out.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't, because I was always curious on like where did the facilitation come from? And it's interesting that it coincided with your role in Google, but then you kind of also were
Yeah.
developing the craft in the background.
Yeah, I think for me, this work of facilitation and also design, both of them you can go all the way back to childhood, because really what we're talking about is being in front of a group of people
Mhm.
and helping influence them in a
Mhm.
direction. That's all we're talking about. And I laugh because I we're sharing stories about my mother when she passed a couple of years ago. About her, and a neighbor came up and said, you know what I loved about Janet the most? She used to run Simon Says, like this child's game, at birthday parties, and she would go, right, Simon Says, and she would do this game and get everybody involved and engaged and active. And it hit me that that's literally what I'm doing, albeit not children's games, but I'm getting in front of a group of people and trying to bring energy and trying to influence them in a direction, to help them be more effective in leadership or working together in teams. And so I've been doing this. Like, if I think about it truthfully, like the facilitation came from my mum, the desire to be in front of a group of people to help, lift people up and energize them and get them doing stuff. And then you add in the coaching basketball and how important that's been for me and my basketball club, Queens, here in Belfast, and just having opportunities to coach from when I was like 16, and all of that about being in front of people and designing and thinking about outcomes and experiences. Like, so I'm really passionate about the fact that it didn't start in Google. Like,
that's important to know.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. The access and the privilege and the opportunities came as a result of being in that environment.
Yeah.
But I think the passion, the desire, and certainly the core skills came way, way before.
But even you mentioned at the start that your mum put you in a theater group.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, to me, when I connect the dots, it's like that's where it started, because you were struggling with confidence, and now you in turn do that for other people.
Yeah.
Essentially, people are coming to you like, I'm struggling with my team. How do I become a better leader? But also, how do I instill confidence in other people? And it's just, again, it's interesting just connecting the dots of like from when you were 6 years old till now. So your exit, the big Google exit, what was the next step for you? Like, did you feel like you knew that you wanted to create something for yourself, or was it kind of like this big unknown?
I think a couple things. I think oftentimes there's this belief that stuff happens overnight, that I was like, time to leave. It took me like 3 years. I mean, I really had a hard time in London. Wasn't great at the job, struggled with it, wasn't getting energy. It cost a lot for me, and the environment really wasn't the best, if I'm honest, for lots of different reasons. Some of that to do with the leadership, some of it just to do with the core job, and a lot to do with me. So it took years to leave. And I think anyone that's made a big shift in their career life, they know that it's not an overnight thing. I thought I wanted to leave Google. I wasn't sure. I had this opportunity to move from London to Dublin, take on this global L&D role. And I thought, oh my God, I have to take this because I'll regret it if I don't try it. But I'll not lie. When I moved from London to Dublin, I wasn't sure if it was me leaving Google or me leaving the role in Google London, but I arrived into Google Dublin. And I think the first day I was like, what are you doing here, Tony?
Because you also mentioned at the start that you hated Dublin the first time.
I was like, what? Yeah, I remember. It was like short memory. I didn't have a great time in the first. I mean, it was good. There were parts that was good, but I was like, what am I doing back here? And it just felt like going back in time, and it didn't feel like forward momentum. I think that was a big thing. I think the other thing about that experience, right? I was really eager to be great at my work. I cared deeply about my craft. And one of the reasons I took the job in Dublin was because I was told that the leader really cared about people development. I thought, okay, I can get behind this. It was a small enough organization, global, 500 people. So a nice size to be able to go in and do some interesting stuff. And with a leader who wants to do this and who's really passionate that I can work with, this is going to be a fantastic situation. But I moved there, and that leader barely said hello to me, let alone talk to me about people development. And I remember thinking, yeah, it's not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm not going to be able to do the best work I can do here. So I had two choices in front of me, really, when I was getting ready to leave. One of which was to travel and explore the world and just sort of get energy back and go back out on the road, or I could start doing the work that I really wanted to do. It was February 26th, the day I left Google. I was in London in March 2020, first week, and had a client lined up. And then the pandemic hit, obviously, and it was crazy because this client was a co-working space, really good organization called Work.life in London. They went into survival mode, as did a lot of folks in different industries. And I just then got into a small flat that I lived with my brother, and started working and just doing any work I could, and just whatever anybody would need help with in this space. I was like, yep, absolutely. And didn't matter how much they could afford to pay me. I was just like, let's just start doing the work. So that's kind of the great exit.
It was interesting at the Playmakers Summit, Erin beautifully said the birth of People Playbook was your experience of being in such toxic environments that you're like, you know what you don't want to be, and you know the leaders that you want to create and the cultures that you want to create. And I thought that really encapsulated like the beginning stages of People Playbook. And like from the time that I've known you, you get stuff done. Like we met for 3 hours. We just had a conversation, and then within a couple of weeks, we were creating this like massive course together. And I think it's a testament to your connections, your network, but also you're a visionary. And I don't mean that to like, I always try and compliment you and you never take it. So now I've got you here.
It sounds gross, doesn't it?
But you are like, you set a goal of like, this is what I want to do, and you actually make it happen. And I've met very few people in my life that have the capacity, but also just like the willpower, the grit to make it happen. And I think like I don't want to skim over the journey within People Playbook because I know it's been such a hard fight to get here. And these last few years, there's been such a like steep growth in the best possible way. But with that comes with a lot of loss and grief and sacrifice. And yeah, I just think it's such a testament to you. Like obviously you're really good at building a team. And when you look back at just how you've grown up and the places that you've experimented and lived, you're able to like bring people with you. So I guess transitioning into like building People Playbook, what has been the hardest lesson that you've learned in creating your business?
It's all been very easy. You know, I, the hardest lesson, I think the hardest lesson, which I continue to learn, is when to say no and when to walk away.
Mm.
And that's from environments or people or situations, whether folks that I work with, that we, employ either on a full-time or a freelance basis, or clients. It's been able to go and look at it in the cold light of day and say, I won't be able, I can't serve you. And that's for lots of different reasons typically, but oftentimes the only reason for me that that happens is that there's not that sense of shared responsibility and collaboration. And I just can't help you then if we're not in this together, because I don't see us as a provider.
Mm.
And that's been really challenging even recently with some clients where they might be used to providers. And I don't want to be that. I want to be a partner. I want to work with you to achieve your goals for your business, but we're in it together. Make no mistake. And I apply that to the people that we work with. And, and the freelancers, associates, we call Playmakers. It's the same thing. Hey, we're in this together. Let's give it a good go. Life's short. Why don't we do our best work? And it's been hard because I'm very loyal and I'm loyal to people I work with, and I don't want to do my best work. And so there's tension there. So it's knowing when to walk away. I mean, the first time I had to walk away from a client, I gave them back 50% of what they'd paid me,
Mm.
which other people who run businesses were like, you're mad. You've done the work. You shouldn't have to do that. But I didn't feel good about not completing the task. And I said, as a gesture of goodwill, please take 50% back and call it a day. And, I ended that relationship. It was really painful. It took me days to write basically a thoughtful response and email. And that was really hard. And, but it was the right thing to do. And I've got to be more comfortable with saying no whenever it's not going to serve them as well. It's not serving someone. It's like, if you don't have that, it's not good for anyone. And that just even last week, I introduced like 5 principles to our Playmakers. And I said, this is what our business is built on. And this is what our relationship is built on. And the 5th one, which I've been thinking more and more about, is like, this is so true, is that everyone must win.
Mm.
It can't be uh, there can't be a business model where somebody loses. The client can't lose. The participants can't lose. The Playmakers, the people we employ, can't lose, and we can't lose. The business People Playbook shouldn't lose. So if we can get a situation where everybody wins, that's the stuff, and I think we can.
So I want to pivot into like how, like for people that don't know what a playmaker is, how did that come about? Like, especially around the time like that your mother passed away.
Yeah, our business originally, I hired a couple of folks to come in and to support me doing the work. that's really what it was at the start. I always worked with associates, right, and brought people in now and again, but very ad hoc, right? When I saw an opportunity, talked about execution, getting stuff done. Like I really match people to problems. Just that's what I do. I just see a problem and I see a person that can solve it, and I go, well, you're going to come in and help that. It's magic when it works, and it I'm getting even better at identifying the right people, and usually it's based on who really cares about it. 'Cause if you care, I think you usually do great work. So we had ad hoc associates coming in to do work, and yeah, in 2023 in September, we had this huge gig, biggest single gig in our business's history in terms of revenue and impact and reach. 150 managers in Barcelona. It was huge for a really great client. And I was due to go. We had our comedian Jared joining. We had music coming with I think it was Lucy and the whole team going. It was a big effort. And then my mum passed away that week, and so obviously that was yeah, that was the priority. And so we quickly, David and I needed to do it in our business. We had to pivot and find someone to take on that responsibility to hold a room of 150 and run this program that we designed half day. And yeah, thankfully, sort of a collaborator friend, somebody else who I've been doing a bit of work with, I knew from the Google days, Connor stepped up and took it on. And what was amazing was to have a team of people that could quickly swoop in and kind of save the day for me and take the pressure off me whilst not losing business or sacrificing their experience. Because make no mistake, you know, even though I was absolutely grieving and in a horrible place, you know, I was raised to care deeply about doing great work, and uh, it was scary to not know how that was going to happen because 150 people are still flying to Barcelona and they're still going to be there and they still deserve to have a really great experience. And what was amazing was we did. We and they and us and the team, everyone pitched in, and it was amazing. Our clients were like 10 out of 10. And in that moment, you know, for a couple of reasons, I was like, this is the way to go. I think one, I didn't want to be the single point of failure and have to carry the weight of a couple of people's salaries and family life and mortgage and everything that's coupled with that, and there's job security. And so I didn't want that to happen. And I wanted to have the ability as well to step back. And then secondly, yeah, I recognized that actually my role could change and I could take on more of a leadership position and bring in the right people. And actually the clients, everybody's going to do better without me there sometimes. So, and that's been the coolest thing to see sessions like that where I'm not involved at all or very little involvement. And for everything to go so well, better probably than if I was in it. And like, that's like a genuine, you know, I can say that without my ego being attacked. I feel amazing about that. And so that's been the biggest shift. And as you suggested, it was the origin of, okay, we're going to move into a playmaker first model because I don't want to be a single point of failure. And I think we can serve our clients better if we bring different people in.
Yeah, I just want to hold in that space because I remember at that time because we were due to go to San Francisco
Mm,
and that was like 2 weeks after your mother had passed away.
mm,
And I remember at that point your business was like taken off. And I think I'm just curious, and other people that have maybe experienced like grief and loss, like how do you grapple with the fact of like your professional life is doing so well, but the personal life, like, because that was a really challenging 2 years for you, really, you know, of like navigating your professional success, but inwardly.
mm. I think grief exists. I think anyone that's lost someone close to them or a parent, um, yeah, I think, yeah, we all suffer different levels of grief, but yeah, I still carry it with me and,
Mhm.
uh, constantly trying to navigate that space. But you know, I think what I tried to do, and I think my brother and sister also subscribe to this and have lived out this, is that, you know, what our mum want, you know, and you know, she didn't work her ass off for us to not do our best work or to be there for people or to be people who, when you say you're going to do something, you do it, you do your best. So there's certainly that. There's absolutely that. It's in her legacy, in her memory for sure, without question. Um, I think that extends to my responsibility for the people I've hired.
Mm.
Their livelihood depends on me. I mean, that's a fact. That's not a, I'm not trying to, yeah. It's just the reality of it. And so I have to be able to do my part as they have to do their part, and everyone that's involved has to do theirs. So I think there's that. And I think quite honestly, I remember that San Francisco trip, and, for me at that time, actually it was probably right to do it
Mm.
because I didn't want to sit with too much, really. I wanted to go and get into some flow and get out of my head. And so, it was cool to do that. And the work gives me that an outlet and escape. And I'm more present in when I'm doing this work than I am doing most other things in my life. So it's fantastic for that. I did break down in the airport. I don't think I know if I told you, but I did call someone, kind of a friend, Trina Vargo, called her, and I just, sorry, she was messaging me actually to call me, and I was sitting in the lounge, and she was like trying to call me. I said, I can't really talk. I'm kind of in a moment of grief here. And she kept calling me. And I was like, go away. And uh, yeah, got on a call with her, and yeah, she was amazing. Talked about her own grief, and it was very, very, very good in that moment. So I think that was really critical. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be 5,000 miles away from everybody you know and care about, and be dealing with grief. But at the time, half of it was necessary for the business, but really, if I'm honest, it was more for me. It was more, I was ready to do that gig and wanted to do that gig and wanted to get out of flow. But uh, yeah,
I want to pivot into, like we were talking about earlier, of like people have now mentioned that you're a leader and that you're sitting, like people that you really respect and that are senior to you as well. And you were saying that you're having this kind of like imposter syndrome of like, am I a leader? What does that mean to me? What has that identity been like for you to like shift into that? And do you see yourself as a leader? Because you're now like you have a team of nearly 20 people.
yeah. No, I don't. And it freaks me out when I'm reading LinkedIn posts where someone's saying, under Tony's leadership, I almost have to just check them talking about this, Tony. But we were just chatting about that, obviously, before when we had some coffee, and I, I think you can't. I don't know. Possibly you can, but what is leadership? Well, let's start with that.
Yeah.
Let's start with leadership. What is leadership? I subscribe to the definition that simply put, it's about influence. And I don't think you can say I'm influential. I don't think you can do that. So I don't think you can say I'm a leader. I think you could be a manager. I think you could be in a position of authority for sure, but to really influence people and motivate and inspire and drive momentum in a certain direction, I think is interesting. So yeah, it's been weird this last even just week or two, like to really step into that. And I know that my team, again, some senior folks, I'm thinking about Dr. Kim Howell, who's been a great partner of ours in Playmaker. She's been telling me to lean into it for many years, but you think only this week I'm really feeling like, wow, we had this group of people come together, and we were able to facilitate an experience, and we're now working with also global programs and clients. And it's really, the scale is significant. Right now we've got 4 or 5 pretty large scale programs happening at once, and trying to get everybody bought into what we're doing here, and how we approach our work. That feels to me more like what a leader needs to do. So it's sort of stepping into that, but certainly it's bloody uncomfortable, because yeah, you've got folks that have a decade or two on you, and they're calling you a leader, and you're like, oh, that's weird and bit icky, but also, it's reaffirming and reassuring, and I think it's a great, yeah, privilege, and it's an honor, like, for these people who I respect and admire. So I see it as much more of a collaborative journey. I just happen to be at the front of something at the moment, but certainly make no mistake, this is if People Playbook's a ship, we're all on it, and everybody's all hands on deck, and everybody's contributing. I don't care if you're a photographer, a videographer, if you're doing operations online, or if you're designing, learning, you're facilitating, you're doing graphic design, like everybody's contributing to making sure this thing runs smoothly, and that we do right by the people that trust us with their teams and leaders. It's a big deal.
Huge,
You know,
huge.
it's never lost on me that clients say, yeah, we've got 10, 20 or 100 or 150 people coming together for half a day, and We trust you to guide them through an experience with meaningful outcomes. That's serious. So we take it seriously. So yeah.
So we've talked a lot about, like, I'd say 2024 was really talking about like what it looks like to be a high performer. And we've talked about you being a leader. What things do you have to do within yourself to perform at a high level? And when you're not performing at a high level, what are the steps for you to like kind of rebalance yourself? Because you're working at, like, I feel like the projects that you're working on now and that I've been a part of as well, it's like this is top tier stuff. It's not just like small
Mm.
independent companies, it's like global international companies. What, like, how do you get yourself ready for that? And what does it mean to you to be a high performer?
Yeah, good question. Three things come to mind. There's the 3 points from Tony McGaharan on high performance for me right now in this moment. I think the first thing is being proactive. And we just did that. We had 20 people come to Ireland to do a Playmakers Summit where we invested in them proactively, and we said, this is who we are, this is what we're about. We're purposeful, practical, playful, and helping everybody get on board with that mission and to understand our business has been the proactive element. So we've got to be proactive in order to perform at a high level. That's what I need to. I need to bring everybody on board early, not late. The second thing that I need to do to be effective is to let go. Letting go of control for anyone that's been a doer, anyone, you talked about execution earlier and getting things done. Anyone that is used to doing that, it's a struggle to start to let go. But I believe if you do the first thing really well and you get people on board and give them clarity and guidance and direction, you can do the second a bit easier. You can let go. So that's the second thing for sure. And then the third thing that I thought about over the break was I want to be and need to be spending my time where I have a unique competitive advantage, right? And for me, that's sometimes thinking about the next thing. It's not about the thing today or this year. It's about what's 2026 look like? What do the next couple of years look like? What are we not doing that we should be doing? And creating space to think about that and let it happen, right? That creativity has been quite fun to do. And actually, if I'm honest, because the first two are happening right now, and we've got such a great team that we've been investing in over years. I feel like we're sitting doing this right now and spending time away from doing the core tasks because I trust and know that everything else is in hand to happen at the high level that I would expect of myself and that the people in our team, our playmakers, expect of themselves.
So I have an uncomfortable question for you. Well, it might not be uncomfortable, but when I tend to ask people what they think their strengths are and their value that they bring, people struggle with it. How does that sit with you?
Well, you're catching me off the back of our Playmaker Summit, so I feel equipped to talk a little bit about at least my thinking and my philosophy on how I exist in a world of and in this work. And I shared this with our Playmakers, and it was more of a call to action for them, but it's an extension of what I believe about myself, which is nobody will care more about it than I will. I will care more about doing the best work that we can than anyone else. And I think that's a strength because I think it's uncommon. Like oftentimes people orient themselves around what they can gain and how it makes them feel and what do they get. I got no interest in that. I have only deep interest in caring more about helping you achieve what you want to achieve and create an experience that you want to experience. Because I think that's really enjoyable to be of service to others.
So to kind of like tie everything together, we've kind of gone through like the 5 chapters of your life, your upbringing, your kind of early career, time in Google and travel, the start of People Playbook, and now we're kind of in the 5th chapter of like what's next. So if you could give me your top 3 lessons over the last 5 years of what you've learned about yourself within business, and also just kind of showcasing like a timestamp of where you're at right now.
Okay, great. 3 points on the last 5 years. Well, it is cool. And thank you for sitting down with me and asking me questions and talking through this journey. Because yeah, as you know, we wanted to market 5 years feels quite significant as a milestone, half a decade, and navigating a pandemic, multiple teams and different clients and different projects. It's been fun. 3 points. Yeah, I think firstly, and we've talked around this, but yeah, yeah, people first. And it sounds so cliche and silly and light, but it's absolutely critical. And anyone that's worked with me, client or playmaker, knows that whenever I'm approaching a problem, an opportunity, a challenge, doesn't really matter. I'm not thinking technically. I'm thinking people. I'm thinking who can solve this problem in the best, most creative, engaging, and meaningful way. And that's worked for People Playbook. It works for me. I enjoy it. And, I think it's what's led us to have the success that we've had, right? Knowing who should be where and when they should be there, and knowing that those people, when you get them in the room, like I bet on our team to solve almost any problem, whether in the moment or in the design room. We've got the best people that are going to solve problems. So yeah, people first. That's why it's People Playbook. It's not Playbook people. Playbook's the second. So that's the first thing. The second thing for me is you've got to maintain a high bar for the work. Performance matters. And even though I'm very people oriented and I'm people first, and I like to hope, and I'm quite intentional about caring for the people I work with, again, client or playmaker, we're there to do a job and perform a task. And I have a high bar for what I expect us to be able to deliver. And I say we, again, we're not providers. We're not vendors. We're partners. What we're trying to accomplish together in a project absolutely has to be the best. If it isn't, I have no interest in being involved. You can go elsewhere, and you should. And again, I apply it to clients and playmakers. If you're not in it to do the best work you can, it won't work. So I really want to keep the high bar that we've had from day dot, whether that's in design or video, learning designer or facilitation. It's just got to be the best. Like, let's give it a good go. I mean, one of the basketball lessons is leave it all on the court. And I really believe that. Like, I think about work, basketball, and life as finite opportunities. And I don't want to have anything left in the tank. And whether I've worked with you once or twice before, or this is the only project we're ever going to do, you're going to get the best that I have in that moment. So absolutely maintain a high bar and keep raising it, to be honest. And so my third point, probably in terms of core lesson that I've been reflecting on, and it's actually been on the backdrop of what I would see as a failure, or certainly not a fun moment, was last year we were in Barcelona. You were there, and we tried to be sort of different to who we are. We weren't true to ourselves, and we found ourselves leaning into content-led and teaching-led and trying to accomplish too much in terms of a checklist. And I take responsibility for that, because I think my resilience was low. I think we've talked about, grief and various things going on. Also just a lot of different work, and the business was scaling, and found ourselves in a corner where we tried to do too much, and in the wrong way, in the way that wasn't very People Playbook. And so I think my third point is around creative risk taking. I want my team and me, especially me, from the get-go, to be taking creative risks. I want to be trying new things always, because if we're trying new things, we're pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone. We're pushing those around us outside their comfort zone. And we've a greater opportunity of being more memorable, and therefore creating memorable experiences, and therefore having an impact on how people lead and how people work together. If we do what everybody else does, or we do it the same way we've been doing it, we can expect the same results. And I don't want the same results. I want better results. I want to change cultures, and I want everyone to live and work in a more healthy, happy, and productive way.
Such a gorgeous mantra. So my last question, I feel like this is like a beautiful way to kind of like wrap everything up. Thank you so much for sharing and kind of going through all the different aspects of your life. And I know it's quite vulnerable at times, and it's not easy to put it all out there. And I know that so many people are going to get this just to get to know you better, because I think I'm not from the corporate industry, and just even being with People Playbook over the last 2 years, I've seen how people say they want to have human connection and vulnerability, but there's such a blockage of like how they want to be perceived. And I think People Playbook do a great job of pushing past that. But I also am always pushing you to tell your story. I'm always pushing you to dig deeper, and I'm very grateful that you've trusted me with this and that we've gone so many different places. So my last question is, what are you learning about yourself right now?
I'm learning about how there's so much more to learn. And it sounds silly. It's like there's been moments over the last few years where I thought, I've got this. I know exactly what this business is and what it looks like, and I know how to take it to the place that I want to take it. And I think what both excites and scares me is not knowing now what happens next and being comfortable with the unknown. And I'm learning that there might be a time where different people will come in and shape this, and that's quite exciting because I think I have good ideas, but what I've been learning more and more, especially off the back of having our team come together, is that I have such great people around me that are influencing me regularly. I mean, anyone in our team knows that sometimes I'll say I've got this great idea and I'll share an idea, and then someone will say, Tony, that was actually my idea. And I hope they take it as a compliment. And of course, then I go, "Oh God, you're right. I'm so sorry." But really, what I mean to say about that is, I'm picking up so much from the great group of people around me, the playmakers and the folks in our team who are inspiring me to think differently. And I'm learning so much from them. It's affecting the way this business is growing in a way that I would never have thought, which is really exciting. Which means that the next 5 years is going to be it's up for grabs, and I have no idea exactly what way it will go, but I'm excited about the people we're doing it with.
And I hope we can come back in 5 years and have another conversation.
Absolutely. Please God.